Really? Sioux Origin strikes again. What is it this time? Musk drops a huge amount of information, including confirmation of a Starship flame trench. Starship Pad 2 is just around the corner and it will be even taller and very different. China copying Falcon 9 while its rockets land on villages. Falcon Heavy reaches 10 flights and the Redline heli gets a bird's eye view of Starbase. My name is Felix, welcome to What About It, let's dive right in. Starship updates. Things are always moving fast at Starbase, our rocket factory of the future, and this week has been overloaded with new and interesting information. Want to find out more? Let's do this, here we go. Let's kick off our journey today at the Star Factory, because Ship 30 is receiving serious attention and regaining many of its previously missing tiles. Of course, these aren't the same tiles that were taken off. Those are in the garbage with the vertical tank farm and booster 4 now, so what are the new tiles? These are the new version 2 tiles, which are supposed to be twice as durable as the ones that were removed. They are likely denser and less prone to ablation, but also likely made from largely the same material. Looking at these pictures doesn't quite show just how fast SpaceX's progress has been though. Comparing this to just 2 days prior makes it clear. With new tiles visible, the ablative layer covers many sections, and with the silicon felt getting added back, the speed becomes obvious. Still, it appears they haven't gotten to the more complex heat shield pieces yet. Thanks to a recent comment by Musk, we know that this ship won't fly until SpaceX heavily upgrades the flap hinges. Make sure to watch until the end, we'll talk more about his comments down the line. For now, let's shift our gaze just a bit to the Sanchez lot, where thanks to our brand new flyover with Redline heli, we can get a good look at the sections for Tower 2. Work has once again resumed on these sections, with teams working hard to prepare each section for a roll to the next Starship Orbital launch tower. Unlike Tower 1, these sections are almost fully equipped before stacking, as it's easier to build things when you don't need to take it to the top of a skyscraper. Speaking of Tower 2, why don't we head over to the launch site in our heli to see how the base of the tower is coming along. And in just 3 short weeks we already have a nearly complete base. Incredible! As we showed in our last video, SpaceX has nearly finished pouring concrete into the tower's legs to reinforce them. This has been followed by the final outfitting of the base. If you remember, the tower sections at Sanchez are already pre-outfitted with plumbing and wiring. This is basically an instant tower. Well, as instant as a Mechazilla comes, right? Since the base was just fabricated, it is not fleshed out like the segments, so workers must add a lot of equipment before stacking can commence. But with the base almost done, when will stacking happen? Due to the reasons I just stated and other side preps that still haven't taken place, SpaceX may take a bit longer before Section 1 is brought and lifted. However, even though no tower sections have moved to the launch site, they are still on the move. If you've been following the development of this structure for some time, you'll know that 7 of the 9 sections needed were built here in Florida at the Cape. Then, after a trip that took about a week, they arrived in Texas and were subsequently rolled to Sanchez. But that only happened with 5 of the 7 segments built in Florida. 2 more were left behind at Roberts Road, the facility where they were built along with the chopsticks. These were then shipped by barge to Brownsville, and after a short stop due to bad weather, we're looking at you, Alberto, they arrived. Yep, that's all the sections of the tower now. Next up is the move to Sanchez from the port of Brownsville. We already have the closers for this event, SpaceX being SpaceX. A roll is scheduled for the 26th and 27th for each respective tower section. This means that the rollouts will likely happen just after recording this, and if so, the footage will be shown on the screen right now. Of course, while looking at the tower, it is just a little hard to ignore the massive crane that wasn't there before. Can't ignore. And SpaceX has finally raised the giant. The Demac CC-8801 crane has reached nearly its full height with only a few pieces missing. As you can see from this view, the crane has a wider boom at the bottom, which helps with stability. This contrasts with Frankencrane, which had a split boom that spreads the load across 2 smaller booms. Wider booms tend to have a much higher integrity, which is another benefit and added reason why SpaceX prefers this new crane to the one that assembled Tower 1. As someone who finds these massive cranes fascinating, I am super excited to see it build the world's largest launch tower. Alright, let's move over now to our original orbital launch mount. You may wonder what is happening with our tiny booster 14.1. When recording this video, no action had happened as the test was seemingly cancelled. This may have been because the LR-11000 crane, which may have been needed to help with any testing, was preoccupied with tank farm scrapping. SpaceX still moved the chopsticks, however, and they almost seemed like they had a little too much to drink as they moved all over the place. And they were pretty quick too. They did close around the booster at one point, but soon after they were opened again. At the time of recording, no test had been performed on B14.1 yet. It is currently hooked up to a water line to add weight to the booster, and closures are scheduled for around when you watch this. So if testing did occur, we'll show a clip of it now. Since I just mentioned that SpaceX's LR-11000 crane is busy scrapping the orbital tank farm, let's check in on the progress there. The orbital tank farm, which once fueled the world's most powerful rocket, is nearly non-existent. Of course, I am talking about the old orbital tank farm or vertical tank farm, which consists of vertical tanks with an outer shell and an inner tank to hold cryogenic propellants. Now, if you've watched any Y episode in the past weeks, you have heard about the process of scrapping these tanks. SpaceX is rushing forward with this. They want to see all of these tanks gone before Flight 5. When we left off last time, 3 tanks remained, one sporting its GSE shell. Now we have only 2 remaining tanks, neither with their shells. SpaceX has been removing these so fast that by the end of the week we might just have one of the greatest views in the world. You can find another one of the greatest views in the world by looking at things from the sky. Did you know you can take a helicopter ride over Starbase and see the same views as in our videos? Visit redlineheli.com/Felix to book your very own helicopter ride over Starbase with $25 off. You'll never forget this. Now, some of you may remember last week we talked about a recent interview YouTube resident astronaut Tim Dodd was able to get with Elon Musk. Well, that was part 1, and now we have part 2, which is full of incredible updates, especially around future Starship Towers. This, of course, includes Tower 2, so let's talk about that first. But before I tell you about that, we've looked into our channel metrics and over 2 million returning monthly viewers who have not yet subscribed. Help us improve the channel even further by double checking that you've hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our updates. And while you're at it, give us a like and become a wise supporter for exclusive SpaceX updates. With it, you get access to daily Starbase photo galleries, including satellite, aerial, and ground photos of SpaceX's progress, and countless other extras on top. And no matter how much you decide to give, everyone gets the same supporter content and access. You decide what you want to give. Alright, back to Tower 2 and Musk's massive info dump.
It'll be taller to allow for the next generation of Starship.
For starters, it is growing, or at least it will grow even more. All signs point to Tower 2 stacking soon. But with all tower sections stacked, it will only be the same height as Tower 1, and we have an FAA filing placing it at the same height, if not shorter. This is confusing because Musk specifically said the tower would accommodate the height of a version 2 Starship, which is a lot larger than the current tower, as you can see here. So what's going on then? Before we talk about avoiding launch craters, let's talk about some fresh air for a moment. Alright, so I thought that outdoor air was bad, but then I discovered that the air inside my home is likely a lot worse, sometimes up to 5 times more polluted. Introducing NeoPX, the first bioengineered air purifier designed to capture and recycle harmful indoor air pollutants known as volatile organic compounds or VOCs, which come from everyday household items like furniture, cleaning products, and cooking. NeoPX is a living air purifier, 100% nature-based, designed by PhD scientists to bring the power of nature and science into your home.
That's why we chose NeoPX.
The secret behind NeoPX is in the pollutant-eating bacteria that lives with your plant. Simply mix the Power Drops formula with the water and add it to your plant every month to activate the air purification process. NeoPX purifies the air as effectively as 30 regular houseplants. It's an eco-friendly alternative powered by nature, electricity-free, and comes in a self-watering planter made from biodegradable materials.
The air really does feel fresher.
87% of the customers feel the difference just a week after setting up NeoPX.
Make a difference with nature.
Fight air pollution with NeoPX.
When you purchase NeoPX, you will receive 6 power drop pouches. To celebrate our launch, Neoplans is offering a 7th pouch free of charge. That's 1 extra month of pure air. Go to neoplans.com/whataboutit and the code will be applied automatically at checkout. Shipping is available within the US with worldwide shipping coming soon. Thank you Neoplan for sponsoring today's video. Okay, back to the mysteriously growing tower. Either SpaceX has some tower sections hidden somewhere, or we will start seeing more being built soon. Of course, SpaceX could also build the tower to its original height for now and then raise it later, or Musk simply worded it wrong. Raising the tower after the stack would be very complicated and I almost rule it out already, so we're still a bit in the dark here. A third possible option would just be to raise the ship quick disconnect, which then would accommodate the larger Starship. Another change to the launch infrastructure is the launch pad itself. I've been saying it for some time, the new pad should better be very different. And indeed it will be, we are getting a flame trench. Yep, it looks like Musk realized that after blasting a crater with Flight 1, maybe a spot for all that pressure to go would help. Of course, he wasn't completely wrong with the initial idea. With the deluge plate, the launch pad seems to have held up pretty well for the last few flights after a few refurbishments. I was never a big fan of the water deluge plate, even though it worked. It is not rapidly reusable, rather a hotfix for an initial design than a glorious solution. When it comes to the launch pad though, it is not just a trench that needs changed. The whole structure is getting an overhaul. We speculated something like this was the case, especially after the launch mount legs that SpaceX had built at the Cape were torn down, but now we know for sure. This is likely also the reason SpaceX is building Tower number 2 before launch mount number 2, as Musk also confirmed Tower 1 would be used in catch attempts. So it looks like there is no catch-only tower for now. What do you think will the new OLM look like? Let your imagination run wild, tell us in the comments how you'd improve it. The other very interesting thing Musk talked about was in regards to changes to the ship's heat shield after Flight 4. In addition, the ablative was tested with both a single layer and a double layer during Flight 4 to see how it would perform. In this case, the double layer seems to have protected the Starship perfectly, keeping the inside nice and cool, while the single layer still allowed enough heat in to make the steel glow. But importantly, the steel may not have failed. So it is possible SpaceX may opt for a single layer of ablative on parts that are less heat sensitive and hope the ablative material in combination with the steel heat tolerance will be enough. In fact, Musk even stated that on internal cameras they could see the payload bay inside of the ship glowing red hot but not melting, proving that steel was an amazing decision for SpaceX. Thanks to Tim Dodd, the everyday astronaut, for sharing this super insightful interview with the world, and to Elon for being so open with the community. Be sure to check out the full interview as well, you rock! Now, Starship is full steam ahead, as Musk also stated that the next launch would be no more than 60 days after Flight 4. This means we are already about 1/3 of the way to the next launch at least, so the launch frequency is rapidly increasing. But that rapid frequency might be a problem for a few of SpaceX's competitors. It looks like they are trying to slow the launches down by complaining to the government.
Hey Daddy, I want a golden goose! Here we go again.
Alright, deep and slow breath of fresh Neoplans air. Let's talk about a situation that SpaceX is dealing with regarding the Starship launch pad here in Florida. Despite our excitement about Starship launching from Florida, it seems some people aren't too happy with it. With the FAA Environmental Impact Statement draft for Starship launches at LC-39A complete, they opened up to the public for comments and complaints against the program. One of these complaints came from Blue Origin. Should have guessed that. The complaint stemmed from the sheer amount of Starship launches that SpaceX wants to complete. Blue stated that it would be difficult to use any of the other pads along the Cape when they must be closed so frequently to accommodate Starship. While this seems cheap coming from a company that has never reached orbit, there is some solid concern behind this. If you're unaware, Blue Origin wants to launch their New Glenn heavy lift rocket from LC-36 once it is online. However, since New Glenn will be a reusable rocket, it will also likely have a quick turnaround time. Blue Origin is set on launching New Glenn much more frequently than most companies, so having their pad closed is less than ideal. Other companies such as ULA and Relativity Space are also developing rockets that are meant to fly constantly, which means that this would benefit more players than just Blue Origin. Now, I'm not saying that any of these rockets are more important than Starship, but it is important that no one company monopolizes the launch market. And this would be the case if SpaceX prevented other companies from launching. Blue Origin also voiced concern at the sheer amount of thrust that Starship has, which could potentially cause pad-damaging shockwaves. We've seen this at Starbase before. This could possibly affect surrounding launch pads as well as LC-39A itself. This is why they petitioned that SpaceX install the necessary infrastructure to protect other pads from the shockwaves. Looking at it this way, it makes more sense to me why Blue Origin would make this complaint. Giving each company a fair chance at the launch market is important. But given Blue's history of jumping to the legal system, some in the space community rightfully question Blue's motives. That's what public discourse is all about. After all, SpaceX's Starship is a very important development, and limiting it might not be the right thing to do. At least they know how to safely bring a booster back without endangering people, unlike our next story. Let's discuss a rather sad story from this week's news. If you remember, we talked about a rocket known as the Long March 10 in a recent episode. That is simply the older brother in an extensive line of Long March rockets ranging from 1 to 11. One such rocket is the Long March 2, one of China's most flown rockets to date. Well, actually it is not that simple. There are many versions of Long March 2, but we are focusing on the Long March 2C today. It is a medium-lift vehicle mostly used for communication and Earth observation satellites. The vehicle has 76 flights under its wing and recently launched the SVOM mission. The payload was a small French and Chinese X-ray telescope, but I don't want to draw your attention to that. The mission went perfectly, so what was the issue? When launching rockets that aren't reusable, the first stage and any side boosters are usually jettisoned into the ocean for public safety. The problem is that from the location Long March 2C launches from, this becomes impossible. It doesn't launch at a coast, so they just ditch the first stages over land. As long as they aren't dropping it on populated areas, that's okay, right? Well, that wasn't really what happened. As a matter of fact, it was quite the opposite. This is fine. Because of the inclination that the payload was going to, the booster ended up being dropped right over a Chinese town. And as you can see here, it wasn't pretty. The rocket appears to have landed a distance from where it was expected to, so this town wasn't prepared for such an alarming sight. Thankfully, there have been no injuries reported from town officials, which really doesn't mean much in China, but there is still a cause for concern. The rocket's propellant is known as hypergolic propellant, which means that it combusts on contact with the oxidizer. This type of fuel is effective in many ways, and we might discuss them in future videos, but for now all you need to know is that it is very toxic. Just inhaling the propellant can cause lung burns, and not just that, it is also carcinogenic, poisonous, and acidic, a true all-in-one killer. As you can see here by the orange smoke, the toxic fumes could have been spread through the village. But it was one simple mistake, right? No, not exactly. This type of accident is quite recurring in China's spaceflight history, and boosters have fallen on other villages in the past. Business as usual. It seems that they might be getting a little too invested in advancing technology and not enough in the safety of their program. This seriously needs to stop. While there is no reason whatsoever to compromise the general public's safety, China is undoubtedly one of the leading forces in space exploration today. Their recent ventures have been into developing reusable spacecraft, and you have to admit they've come a long way. Only in the last year, we've seen 3 low-altitude hop tests of small Chinese prototype rockets. Now we've seen a 4th test. On June 23rd, we saw a successful ascent, descent, and landing of a new test vehicle. While CASC did not name this vehicle, it will likely help the company develop a future reusable rocket. It also helps as a platform to test critical principles of physics that such a rocket must abide by. This test marks the highest altitude a spacecraft has flown and landed from Chinese soil at 10 kilometers and goes a long way in developing these crucial systems. China is on track to start flying Falcon 9-like vehicles in 2026, so the future appears bright for them. And the best part? These boosters will not need to be dropped on innocent people. Seriously. Our next story is one that many of you may have actually missed, despite it being a pretty special launch. With SpaceX launching so often now, it's starting to feel like a routine, but having something feel routine means you might miss something that isn't. Especially if it's a non-Starship SpaceX launch. So what, did Falcon 9 break another milestone? Well yes, it always does, but I'm not referring to Falcon 9 because after all, SpaceX has 2 operational rockets. I am of course referring to Falcon Heavy, which just did it all. The 10th launch is in the books. That's right, 10. Unlike Falcon 9, Falcon Heavy actually launches at a fairly standard pace. This launch of NASA's GOES-U satellite is also the first launch of this 3-cored beast this year. Unfortunately, as awe-inspiring as Falcon Heavy is to watch, its use cases are somewhat limited. And with Starship approaching operational status, Falcon Heavy will likely be sidelined at some point. Unfortunately, you can't pay for a rocket with wows. That's it for today. Remember to smash that like button, subscribe for more awesome content. This is what fuels the algorithm and it helps us immensely. Check out our epic shirts in your favorite Space Nerd store. A link is in the description. And if you want to train your space IQ even further, watch this video next to continue your journey. Thank you very much for watching and I'll see you again in the next episode. Been following the observation. Opened it up, yes. It's on contact with the oxidizer. That's gonna be a nice blooper.